OJ Simpson expected to sit down in front of a parole board here in the next few hours. After serving 9 years of a 33-year sentence, there's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen. Many seem to think he's going to go free. Fox News anchor and legal analyst Gregg Jarrett joins me. Most observers seem convinced that OJ will be granted his freedom. Is it a done deal?
You know, I don't think it's the touchdown that the Hall of Famer may be expecting. It's not an easy one for him. Look, there are about a dozen factors in the guidelines. You know, his disciplinary record, whether he's completed programs, has he been clean from alcohol, drugs, and gang activity, and yeah, that does exist in prison. He should get a good score on that. And
he's been a model prisoner, so
he has been for the most part, and so that militates in his favor, although the seriousness of his crimes, using guns for kidnapping and armed robbery and 10 other offenses, that weighs against him. So it's kind of a mathematical formula in many ways.
You believe that he is a threat to society and should not be released?
Yeah, I wrote a column on this on FoxNews.com in the opinions section. And look, there is a section in the parole guidelines that allows the parole board to determine whether he is a future threat to society. They can actually take judicial notice of the unanimous verdict in the civil trial in 1997, in which the jury found he did indeed brutally kill Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. And they could decide, you know what, if we let this guy out, he is an established recidivist. He will cause harm to others in the future. And remember, he does have one prior conviction in 1989 for beating his wife. So you factor, all of these, there is the aggravating factor. And that's the basis in which this parole board could decide, you know what, he's too much of a risk.
I think a lot of people would be shocked to hear that what he did before, not what he was convicted of, but what he did before or alleged to have done before would be held against him.
Prior convictions can be held against you in a parole.
A civil conviction?
No, prior conviction beating his wife. Now, the civil, see, if you look at that language again on the screen, and it says it's a very subjective thing. It doesn't talk about prior convictions.
Okay.
Is he a risk to the public safety if released on parole? They could take judicial notice of the unanimous jury verdict in the civil trial. And, in fact, they could examine when he took the witness stand. He didn't have the Fifth Amendment privilege, in which he melted on cross-examination and removed any doubt that he's a killer.
It is fascinating that he spent this much time in prison for a robbery when, by all accounts, he committed a double murder and got away with it. I was there for the preliminary hearing.
Right.
And the probable cause affidavit laid out evidence I don't think any of us have ever seen against someone who then wound up getting acquitted.
Yeah. You know, I covered the trial for 9 months in Los Angeles, and I've covered hundreds of cases. I have never seen such overwhelming evidence of guilt. Now, that's just my opinion in the courtroom. But the jurors 2 years later in the civil case, and yes, it's a different standard and burden of proof.
Right.
But they were absolutely convinced that O.J. Simpson is a double killer. And again, this parole board is entitled to consider that.
Okay, but back to that.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen today? We're going to find out this afternoon whether or not he's going to go free later this year.
There's no way to know. I mean, look, he's got he's got to get 4 board members out of 7 to agree to release him. And he did get parole on some of the other crimes, not all of the 12 dozen crimes that he's been getting. A couple of years ago, he was up parole on some of those others, and he did get parole, but not on all of the charges. So, I mean, he has already succeeded to some extent, and if that's a harbinger, then yeah, they may decide to let him go in October. And, you know, he still has a $33 million judgment against him from the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, which has now gone up to $52 million with interest.
Money they'll probably never see.
They'll never get a dime. I mean, they got a little when he sold the Brentwood home. They got a little when he wrote that book, If I Did It. And if anybody's ever read it, it removes any doubt. It was never actually published. But look, you know, I sat in that courtroom for 9 months. His blood is dripping away from the bodies. The blood of the victims are found smeared and spattered inside his Ford Bronco. Blood on his driveway. Nicole's blood is on his socks in his bedroom.
Which I think was among the most damaging evidence.
It was. Weeks before the killings, he bought a 12-inch knife. A replica of the knife proved conclusively that it was the exact same wounds on both victims. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
But much of that may not be part of what we hear today.
It likely would not be. But again, this parole board can take notice of the decision by that civil jury. There's nothing to stop them from doing that.
I can't think of another parole hearing that's gotten this kind of attention. I mean, maybe Charles Manson, when he comes up for parole, gets a lot of attention. But I mean, this is captivating the nation.
It really is. And, people want to hear from OJ. What's he going to say? Is he going to express remorse? Previously, in his parole hearing, in which he succeeded on some of the charges, he expressed sort of half remorse. That, but it kind of sounded like, I'm only sorry I got caught and I didn't really mean to do it. Well, he had claimed I was just getting my stuff back. The jury didn't buy that argument for a moment.
And just to be clear, he won't actually be sitting in the room with the parole board. He'll be via some sort of closed circuit
television. That's right. And the board members are in a separate location. He's at Lovelock Correctional Facility, and there's a multitude of satellite trucks and television cameras there doing the live coverage just outside.
Gregg Jarrett, we appreciate your insight.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much.